And that's the defendant's father, his attorney, reading a statement on his behalf. I'm joined now by Nicole DeBorde, a criminal defense attorney, also a former prosecutor. What else can you possibly say about this case other than it is just horrific and horrible? Let's talk, Nicole, specifically about those parents. Before the break, we played some statement from the attorney where she was specifically talking about an interview that the parents of Chris Watts gave to the local media, basically trying to paint a picture that Christopher Watts had been coerced into this plea deal. But during the statement to the court yesterday, it seemed like they pretty much walked that back. Okay, Nicole, I think we're having some audio issues there. We're going to work to fix that. But in the meantime, we're going to take a look at some of the other crime stories trending across America.
Here are today's top crime stories trending on Law&Crime.com and across the country. A registered sex offender is under arrest for reportedly fatally shooting two people inside of a senior complex in Detroit. 69-year-old James Fleming is accused of killing a security guard, 50-year-old Kenneth Hall, and a resident, 66-year-old Bernice Clark, at the Philip Sims Senior Housing Complex after attempting to rape a female acquaintance in his apartment in the complex. Fleming was convicted of first-degree criminal sexual misconduct in 1988 and is a registered sex offender. He now faces 2 counts of first-degree murder as well as other charges. A woman in Milwaukee is facing charges after she reportedly fatally shot a romantic rival dead in the street. 37-year-old Misty Crutchen allegedly shot and killed 19-year-old Elena Rookert after the two fought in the street, reportedly because Rookert spotted her boyfriend with Crutchen. The two were eventually separated by the boyfriend and Rookert's friend when Crutchen retrieved a handgun from her vehicle and fatally shot Rookert from point-blank range. Crutchen now faces a charge of first-degree reckless homicide. A convicted sex offender in Texas, facing charges for allegedly raping a teen, was bailed out of jail after his mother won $15 million playing the lottery. 47-year-old Jason Wayne Carlisle has multiple convictions for child sex crimes and was currently in jail since last December for an alleged rape of a child under the age of 14 in 2006. Carlisle's mother, Joanne Ames, reportedly hit the lottery in Texas, raking in $15.24 million, although she will only receive $7 million after choosing a one-time cash payment. Carlisle will remain in jail on bond, but with certain restrictions. Those were today's top crime stories. I'm Anthony Velez for Law & Crime.
All right, Nicole, I think we have you back and the audio does seem to be working. Let's talk briefly about that story involving that mother who won the lottery and then used some of her winnings to bail out her son from jail and he's a convicted sex offender.
Well, I mean, if he's a convicted sex offender, then he doesn't have bail. I mean,
I think this was for another charge, by the way.
Right, got it. So, I mean, good for her. You know, if the reason that he was being kept in jail is money, that is really not the way our justice system is supposed to work. Either you're a flight risk or a danger to society and should not be released, or you're not. But money alone, being poor, shouldn't be the reason that we get to keep people in jail and try to pressure them to do a plea deal so that they can get out. So good for her for bonding him out. Let him fight his case.
And again, it was a $100,000 bond, and she paid $10,000 in cash and was able to get him out. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, but we're going to take you back to Colorado for that Christopher Watts sentencing when we return. And I think kind of the hardest part of listening to this testimony, it was all very difficult to listen to, was hearing the district attorney, Michael Rourke, described how Bella, 4 years old, fought back as her father, the man she trusted to take care of her, tried to smother her, did smother her to death. And the fear that those two girls must have felt as their lives were ending. Nicole, if that doesn't upset you, I mean, I don't know what could.
It's pretty bad. It really doesn't get any worse. I mean, there's really no excuse for any of this. I mean, sometimes you see murder or homicide cases where there's a self-defense or, some other argument that has gone before the actual killing. In this case, he's killed children, his own children. And the testimony and the recapping of that testimony by the prosecutor is just devastating.
And let's talk, because I was trying to ask you this before break and we were having the audio issues. What did you make of the parents of Chris Watts' earlier statement to the local media, trying to frame it like Christopher Watts had been coerced into this plea deal?
That's actually not as surprising as you might think. As terrible as this crime is, people, his parents love him, and it is very hard to digest that a family member could do something as horrible as this. And so family will tend to want to believe that there's some other excuse. They are probably having internally real struggles about whether or not to believe even his own words about the fact that he killed his own family. So,
okay. Nicole, let's listen to some more of Michael Rourke's statement. He's the Weld County District Attorney. All right, just hearing the prosecutor's statement there is so difficult. Hearing some of those details, especially how Christopher Watts stuffed those bodies in an 8-inch opening to get rid of the bodies. And he really touched upon this interview that Christopher Watts gave to the local news as well. Nicole, we played that a bit earlier, but I'm sure you got a chance to watch it as well, where he just acted like, he had no idea where his family was, and really making what he did even more horrible if it could become so.
It is pretty spectacular in an awful way, and the prosecutor is doing a good job of highlighting why, knowing in his mind what he had done with his own children, and then, conducting himself in a normal day-to-day way, and then describing it in a very cold and normal day-to-day way is really pretty shocking. And the prosecutor is doing a good job of summarizing the contrast between somebody who is remorseful and him. It's awful.
Have you ever heard of details like this? And I guess, here he is trying to go through all of this to disguise what happened. But really, at the back of his mind, did he really think there was any way he would get away with this?
It's really unclear to me what he was thinking. I mean, the reasoning for such a horrible, horrible crime is still very unclear. I mean, honestly, if I were the defense attorney, and I'm quite certain, these folks have done everything they can for their client, but I would have real questions about his psychological state. I mean, nothing here makes sense about his conduct. It's just horrific.
And again, we believe the motive to be in this is that he had another girlfriend, and that he wanted to get away and start a new life with this woman. And we have covered other cases before where that is the motivation, this desire to escape your current life and feeling trapped and feeling like there's no way out.
Right, and that's certainly what he's essentially explained, but I'm not sure that, for any of us watching this, it makes any more sense. I mean, these beautiful, beautiful children, and choosing to kill them, it really, there is no logic. It's just plain evil.
It certainly is. Okay, we have to take a quick break, but when we return, more from the district attorney, and you will hear his sentence. Stay with us here on the Law&Crime Network. Prosecutor Rourke getting a bit into the motivation of Chris Watts, and that was obviously because he had another girlfriend, wanted to start a new life. But he brought up a good point. Why didn't this man just get a divorce instead of outing his family? Nicole?
Earlier I was saying this makes no logical sense. I understand that we have an excuse that he's given for why he did these things, and certainly the records seem to indicate that that's exactly why he did these things, but it's just so awful and absurd. I mean, it's absolutely not any kind of sane solution. It's really outrageous.
And I think you're right. It's not a motivation, it's an excuse. There's no question here. This is not a justification. It is not a motivation. An excuse for behavior of what only can be described as behavior of a monster. So what is the defense going to say when they have their turn to address the court? Let's listen. Christopher Watts sentenced to 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole for killing his wife Shannon, 34 years old, who was 15 weeks pregnant with their son, and his daughters, Bella, 4 years old, and Celeste, 3 years old. I want to bring in my guest now, Nicole DeBorde. Nicole, in a situation like this, I can't imagine the defense attorneys were surprised by the sentence.
Well, I think they were lucky to avoid a trial in this case, so there's nothing good that was going to come out of that. And I don't think that the judge really had much of a choice but to do exactly as he's done. And the results, you know, it's such a horrific case. There's really no room for a judge or, quite frankly, a jury to do much different.
And the judge did say in his comments, and you get the sense, it's interesting watching these cases because every judge really has a different style to them. Some are really direct, fiery. This judge seemed to be quite laid back in terms of his delivery. But he did say this was the most inhumane crime. He's dealt with thousands of different trials and different crimes, and he used those words.
Absolutely. And this guy, you know, he's going to have a problem when he gets to prison, too. You know, the other inmates don't take too kindly to crimes against children. The court is in a unique position to see this horrific crime with all of the details. You know, when he gets to prison, they're just going to be rumors and newspaper articles. He's got a tough road ahead of him.
And you know what, Nicole? Got to tell you, don't feel the least bit bad for him. I'm sure he's getting everything coming to him that he deserves. All right, let's end that very, very tragic case. We have some other crime news to cover here on the Law and Crime Network. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a few minutes. All right, so that was just a pre-trial hearing this morning in the Denise Williams case. This case is set to go to trial December 10th, and we will be covering it gavel to gavel here on the Law and Crime Network. I want to bring in back Nicole, who's been my guest this afternoon. Nicole, what do you make of this case? There's so many twists and turns, and really it didn't come to light until her lover, who was also the couple's best friend, Brian Winchester is his name, really revealed it as part of an elaborate plea deal, I believe.
You know, another shocking case where really extremely horrible decisions are made, you know, to change a person's life and relationship terms. It's very bizarre. And to me, the bizarre decision-making continues. And right now, one of the things we were hearing her ask to do was to not be present during a deposition where there was going to be testimony about her case. You know, and I just think that's so unusual, because why not be present if you're accused of this, you know, and you're trying to build your defense?
Yeah, what would be the reason that she wouldn't want to be there? I don't get that.
I can't imagine. It makes no sense to me at all. And why her attorney would proceed with the request, even though she is obviously asking that that be done, I'm not sure about that either. It's all very unusual.
It certainly is. But what do you make about the actual case against her? You know, this is a case that happened 18 years ago in 2000. December 16th, 2000, Mike Williams disappeared, and she was not charged until more than a decade later, and she's not going to trial until next week, or excuse me, December 10th.
You know, old cases are always much more difficult for the state because, especially in this type of circumstance, there's not going to be physical evidence. Memories fade and change, quite frankly, over time. And it gets really difficult to establish all of the things that the state needs to establish to make sure that they get their conviction. It will be a challenge because it is old.
It certainly is, and we've covered many cases here that are really essentially cold cases, and you learn that, you know, some of the evidence that you would normally have just isn't there because of technology, but also faded memories from some of the witnesses as well. We're going to continue to monitor that case, and as I mentioned, cover it here on the network when it begins. In the meantime, let's take a look at some of the other stories trending across the country. Here are today's top crime stories trending on lawandcrime.com and across the country.
A registered sex offender is under arrest for reportedly fatally shooting 2 people inside of a senior complex in Detroit. 69-year-old James Fleming is accused of killing a security guard, 50-year-old Kenneth Hall, and a resident, 66-year-old Bernice Clark, at the Philip Sims Senior Housing Complex after attempting to rape a female acquaintance in his apartment in the complex. Fleming was convicted of first-degree criminal sexual misconduct in 1988 and is a registered sex offender. He now faces 2 counts of first-degree murder as well as other charges. A woman in Milwaukee is facing charges after she reportedly fatally shot a romantic rival dead in the street. 37-year-old Misty Crutchen allegedly shot and killed 19-year-old Elena Rookert after the two fought in the street, reportedly because Rookert spotted her boyfriend with Crutchen. The two were eventually separated by the boyfriend and Rookert's friend when Crutchen retrieved a handgun from her vehicle and fatally shot Rookert from point-blank range. Crutchen now faces a charge of first-degree reckless homicide. A convicted sex offender in Texas, facing charges for allegedly raping a teen, was bailed out of jail after his mother won $15 million playing the lottery. 47-year-old Jason Wayne Carlisle has multiple convictions for child sex crimes and was currently in jail since last December for an alleged rape of a child under the age of 14 in 2006. Carlisle's mother, Joanne Ames, reportedly hit the lottery in Texas, raking in $15.24 million, although she will only receive $7 million after choosing a one-time cash payment. Carlisle will remain in jail on bond, but with certain restrictions. Those were today's top crime stories. I'm Anthony Velez for Law & Crime.
We talked about this story earlier, but it is just one of these crazy ones. Here, this woman wins the lottery, $15 million. She takes home $7 million in cash, and then she decides to bail out, to use that to bail out her son, who had been put in jail again after already being convicted for some sex offenses.
Right. And my position is that in an ideal justice system, the poor and the rich would have access to the same justice system. And so if the only reason that you're still in custody is because you can't afford bail, that seems pretty outrageous. I mean, if the conditions that the court can place on a $1 million bond are satisfactory, then they should be satisfactory for someone who can pay a $10 bond. Either the community can be kept safe or they can't. So I don't understand why anyone's in jail because of money.
Well, Nicole, thank you so much. You're going to stick around. I'm signing off. Stacey Delicat is coming up next. We'll be back in just a few minutes here on the Law & Crime Network. Stay with us.